Wondering if I was being heard in it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
because
So I think that's what I'm.
now you just muted yourself, Sharon.
Wondering if I was being heard in.
I'll never get this right. All of this stuff. Your hair looks so adorable. Now you're leaving Friday. When do you come back?
The next Friday. So yeah, yeah, I got my hair all cut. So I'm, I just
And
said
you'll be back teaching on Saturday of the
yes,
following.
Well,
That's
yes,
what
you're
the
going for
dates are.
2 weeks, aren't you? You're not.
just
So you're
no,
going.
She's going to be back teaching on Saturday the 7th,
right.
and I'll be there on the 6th doing some kind of a little.
Oh, okay. So you only go a week? Is that it?
Right. And actually, we're coming back on the 7th. Let me look here at this itinerary.
Oh,
I,
really? That's the Saturday.
yeah, that's the one thing I do is I keep the itinerary up. The whole time I'm like,
Good going. This
let
is
me
going to be
check this.
great.
Yeah, I will be back. I'm leaving on the 30th, and I will be back on oh, Friday, September 6th is when I'm flying back, and I'll actually arrive on Friday, September 6th. So that's one of them. I fly out one day and arrive the next day, but
Yeah,
that's just because of the
time change.
time change. That's why I had to leave so early, is
So you're
because
leaving early on Friday, Colorado time?
yeah, I'm 7:30 a.m. because I have an Uber coming to pick me up. So
All right.
yeah, so yep, I scheduled that. See, that's how I am. You know,
Me too.
reserve this, set this up, get this set, because then there's less surprises because
Yep.
you get enough surprises when you're traveling. So
It's going to be great.
this, yeah. Yep, I am so excited and happy about it. And talking to Mandy yesterday made it even maybe even happier. Uh,
Mandy is who? Who's Mandy?
Mandy is the one who wrote "Isn't This Is Your Only Business?"
Oh, yeah. I was teaching. I couldn't come in. Yeah. You
Yeah.
said.
So, but just knowing that I'm gonna get to see her and a few other people that I'm really, really very fond of, as you well know.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. So you're going for. So you leave. Friday's not the 30th, right?
Friday is the 30th. Yeah.
I thought the Friday was the 29th.
No, Friday is the 30th.
So the first is really Sunday.
Yeah.
I would be married. I got married at 20. So I would have been married. If I got married at 20, I guess what, 40 years? 40 years. Oh, well.
Hey, you know what? That's
I got married August
actually
31st. Yeah.
50 years because I got married at 20 also. And aren't you and I the same age or close?
Well,
No,
no,
you're younger than
I
me.
got married when I was 20, so I'll be 70 in January.
Okay.
And so I got married in August 31st. So is it 50 years or 40 years?
50. What year? 74s?
I
75?
got married 75.
75. So yeah, it'll be 50 years.
Oh my God, that would have been really a very challenging life. I was saved. I'm kidding. It's just a story. It's a story.
That's
Morning
right.
glory.
It is just a story, and and that's the beauty of it is that it's not just a story; it's the same old story. That it, I mean, the more this, I think this is one thing that's really kind of cool about this whole, like Zoom and this global community that we're a part of is that we actually see that other people are experiencing the same things that we've experienced. I'm not the only one that got dumped, when I was, 20 years old and pregnant, and you know my boyfriend said, "Ooh, I can't handle this," and ran off and left me alone. I'm not the only one who did that. There's
Now you see that it's so much better. Like I often say to people, when I got into the 12 steps, I felt really like safe, because as they were going around and talking about their lives, I saw myself and I was like, oh my God, they had my life.
Exactly,
And
exactly,
that's what you get in the course community. Well, in this group
exactly.
anyway.
Yeah, in
Because
this
we've
group
all
too.
had these disruptions, but none
Yeah.
of them really happened.
You know, it's really odd, and I'm just gonna mention this just really quickly, but the man who is the father of my son, who I had when I was 20, um, he actually he went on and became like a multimillionaire. And he had all this property and all this stuff now. We did the search and I found his family, his my son's brother and sister, who were from the Dale's second marriage, whatever. So anyway, so turns out actually he was married 5 times. Turns out, then he
Wow.
had all this money. So then, once he got to meet his son, my son, and they became very close in the last few years of his life. And
You
he's
got close with your son? That is beautiful,
yeah,
Lynn.
yeah, they became very close. And they're so like each other that it was like, pretty uh it, it was inevitable once they met each other. But anyway, yeah, so now come to find out he had all this money, all this, all the times that we were going through hard times, suffering. Oh my Lord, for just, one little bit of child support would have been so helpful. But no, that's not how it worked. And and now, of course, my son's inheriting a bunch of stuff from this,
How
deadbeat dad.
awesome.
So it's like, what?
Yeah, I just love happy endings, But now where did you live? With your mom?
I lived with my mom, yeah.
Yeah. So she was good with,
Oh
having a
yeah.
baby. Yeah.
Well, she had me. Uh, you guys go ahead and talk. My phone's in the other room and it keeps ringing off the hook. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, we're
Hopefully,
gonna do chapter 15. We're starting chapter 15 the next
yeah.
at 11:30.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Well, I'm gonna go
Perfect.
ahead and put the the book up in the room, and I'll just be right back. I just gotta go get this phone before it. The reason it's ringing twice, I don't get. So,
Well, do you want me to start reading, I guess? Lauren,
yeah.
do you want to read?
No, you go ahead, Sharon.
I don't even know where I start again.
I guess maybe Ken observed.
Right. Ken observed the first summer I spent a lot of time with them. They were writing this chapter for a very prestigious publication on personality theories. They would argue and fight. It was awful. We were just getting to know one another. So we spent a lot of time together. When we talked about the course and the path that led me to them, there was no, I don't know this word, you know how to say that? Criminology. None whatsoever. What
Let's
does
see.
that mean, Lynn?
Acrimony.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Okay.
I'm sorry, I stepped away a second.
Acrimony. Basically, it means um, like anger or resentment.
Okay. So, all right, where am I now?
I don't know. I'm looking for it. Oh, there, right over here. Okay. So, and
Oh, okay. We would finish,
you know
they'd
what's
go
cool about
back.
the Kindle? Oh no, let's see. Can I do this? Let's see. Well, somehow I used to be able to do that and it would tell me the definition. Anyway, sorry about that. So yeah, so here's where we would finish is where you're at.
Okay, so they would screw everything else. Wait a minute. We would finish, they'd go back to the chapter for the textbook and start going at each other. It was almost like Bill and Helen had a pact that they would not screw up the course. They would screw everything else up, but they would be faithful to this. Bill continued. Helen was susceptible to all this attention and massive devotion from Ken. It was amazing. She now had the word of Jesus and the whole thing. This was it. Ken thought Helen was sort of the mother of God, the Virgin Mary. Helen thought Ken was one of the world's greatest saints of all time. She would say things like, I can't think of any saint in history who was as beatific as Ken. So I would have lunch with the Virgin Mary and the world's greatest saint. Of course, I was the world's greatest sinner. I was the terrible, guilty party. I'm not sure why I was guilty, so I was it. Probably one thing was that I was not being loving enough with Helen. I wasn't impressed by the fact that she was the mother of God. This sort of thing went on quite a while, and I was both relieved and annoyed by it all.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Yeah, my gosh. Because even if the two of them were at each other like cats and dogs, when this other guy shows up who's like a saint, oh my gosh, I can just see how that would be just galling to Bill because, but also a relief because he didn't have to deal with Helen's crap. Ken was like a buffer for him, but at the same time, he resented being kind of left out, it seems like.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, they're in their ego. The ego is always suspicious. It's vicious and suspicious, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to continue for a little bit and then I'm going to
Okay.
turn it over to you.
All right.
Clearly, Bill felt both replaced by Ken and by his own acknowledgement. Some panicked that he was not following the injunction to heal his relationship with Helen. What would happen over the perceived failure? He also acknowledged that Ken tried to be inclusive, but the situation remained difficult. Ken offers a revealing and very different perspective. When I asked if he had felt as troubled by Bill as Bill had been by him, he answered that he had not. He said Bill would so thoroughly hide his true feelings that he often didn't know Bill was upset with him until he heard about it from someone else. Wow. He would then approach Bill to address the problem. In his experience, there was very little tension between them, and none at all when the course dominated their discussions. He acknowledged that Bill and Helen's relationship was terrible in many respects, and that indeed it did get worse after he arrived. Wow. His role was often that of a sounding board as they complained about each other. I asked Ken what they could still find to argue about after all these years, and he answered, this is what we do. They would recycle. It was always the same. You know, I see that in myself, like these thoughts that that part of this mind is unconscious. So I see when I go to believing the ego, I'm actually just recycling. Yeah, it was always the same. You said that and you did this and didn't do that. I was there and I don't even remember. It didn't matter. They had a strong love-hate relationship. And that is true for every relationship, I think. You know, I would like to say I never had that with my children, but again, we hide our hate. And there were times I'm sure that I was angry enough to feel that feeling. Well, I did. I felt overwhelmed, but you know, of course we have this, at least for me, I had this like fantasy to be not a good mother, a perfect mother. So, their personalities were so different. I'm sure they argued about me, but not in front of me. Helen would tell me about it later. Helen thought Bill never fully understood the course, so that would come up occasionally. They would argue a lot about Bill's choice of partners. That was a big one. Then there was Harold, who lived with Bill for a year or so. Helen didn't like Harold at all and let him know that in no certain terms. Helen got angry when Bill asked if I could see Harold, which I did. Conversely, if one of them were in trouble or needed help, the other one would be right there. They were very supportive of each other, very faithful to each other in that way. It was very strange, very unusual. I was struck by it. Because Ken and Helen were so close, he offers an entry point into the third perspective, Helen's. One of the ways you could see their differences was that Helen was overly aggressive and Bill was passive aggressive. That's even harder for me. When someone's passive aggressive, well, I must be too if I see it, but I'm just saying that passive aggressive, it's funny because self-referencing happens when I read books sometimes, so I'm going to stop that. Anyway, one of the ways you could see their differences was that Helen was overtly aggressive and Bill was passive aggressive. You always knew where you stood with Helen. Also, Helen was much more aware of her anger than Bill was. Helen was clear and she really never tried to justify it. I knew her very, very well, and it was kind of a given. All right, you want to continue now, Lynn?
Sure, let's see.
Why do I
Somehow
have my hand up? I don't
you
even know.
raised your hand. I don't
I
know.
have that had to be an accident. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Okay. So she did not forgive Bill, did not want to forgive Bill, would not forgive Bill, and she wasn't saying this was a spiritual position. Bill, on the other hand, was not aware. I can give you one example that typified the whole issue. They had three offices, an outer office and their two private offices, very secluded. You have to picture this. We were sitting in Helen's office. There was Helen and her desk. I sat against the wall adjacent to her desk, and Bill would be standing in the doorway, which he would do since everyone once in a while he would go to his office and spoke. Um, okay, so I was literally in the middle. Bill, who did this more often than Helen, tried to put me in the middle of their battle. I don't remember what it was about, but they were at each other's throats. They were sniping at each other. The tension was building, and Bill turned to me, asking me to support him against Helen, saying something like, "Wouldn't you agree, Kenneth?" It was obvious they were both contributing, but Bill, I know, was not conscious of what he was doing. He was being very snide. He was wonderful with words, a master. I finessed it by saying, "Well, you're both doing it," which was true. Bill stormed out, really angry. Helen looked at me and said, "Now you see what I'm up against." She meant Bill's being passive aggressive and not knowing it. That was very, very common. He was just not aware of his own anger and how he was expressing it. Helen was just as much at fault, but she was right in your face. She knew what she was doing. Helen was clear, Bill was not, and that was often the problem. Since he was so good with words, he could make a comment and not even know he was doing it. That particular morning typified, I think that their relationship, what I think what their relationship was like. So I just recognized, as you said, tend to self-identify as well when I'm reading this, and I'm recognizing that I was very much like Bill, pretty much my whole uh, adult life. Once I got into the working world and into a place where I felt like I needed to compete with people, I I I became really, because I didn't want to really let people know what I thought about them. I wanted people to like me and to want to work with me. So I didn't overtly do anything. And I didn't talk about people's behind their backs or anything like that. But I was very subversive in the way that I worked with people. If I didn't like them, I would help them in a way that didn't make them very successful or tend to make them look stupid, or just those little competitive things that people do. And so I recognize myself in that. I have never been good at expressing my anger. never, ever been good at expressing anger. Because, I was traumatized as a child. So, I knew that any expression of emotion like that could cause, bad repercussions. So, I really, and I don't know that Bill was, I mean, I know he was traumatized by being ill, his parents not understanding him, etc. But how he came to where he just wanted to hide his feelings, and probably a lot of it, part of it being homosexual and just being concerned about being outed in any way. You know what I'm saying? That just the idea that he would be spilling the beans uh, made it so that he wouldn't want to do anything to let people know what he was really thinking or feeling. So anyway, I'm going to continue reading. So let me check and see if there's anything. No chat. Okay. All right. So basically, Bill blamed Helen for problems in the relationship. Even after Helen died, I noticed there was a lot of bitterness. That's what Helen had trouble with understanding. When she said Bill didn't understand the course, that is part of what she meant. Somehow he thought the relationship was not healed because Helen wouldn't change her mind. He was always blaming her and feeling that if only Helen would change, he would be healed. A lot of Bill's and my discussions and our work together had to do with that. That was a blind spot for Bill, making it impossible for him because Helen was not going to change her mind. On the other hand, she did not blame Bill for the relationship. She blamed him for just being Bill. She was very clear about her own choices, how they kept the acrimony going. She was brilliant, very insightful, and basically said, I'm not going to do it. Forgive him. She would be very clear with people. Do what I write, not what I do. We spent many, many hours, as an understatement, talking about Bill and what he was doing. What really impressed me about Bill was that despite what he felt, there was a deep sense of commitment and trust to whatever this was with Helen. So yeah, that's interesting, huh? He was very, very conflicted as well. They're both really conflicted, and I think that's what makes a good drama. I'm just kidding. All right. Uh, let's see. Yeah, that's a great picture of Bill and Helen together. My goodness. All right. Picture of Helen and Bill, the good times. So continue.
Carol really put a lot in this book.
Oh,
God.
yeah. Yeah, she did. Well, she was really good friends with Bill. She spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
So,
She wanted to make a tribute to him. Yeah.
yeah. So, this is really good. So, okay. So this is Carol now continuing. During the year 1965 to 1966, as an exception to the established norm, Helen and Bill's relationship did improve. They diligently practiced the course lessons and, as promised, their hostility lessened considerably, but they didn't keep it up. Ken said they tried very, very hard to look at their projections, accept them, and just be responsible for them. I have some of their letters in my book, Absence from Felicity, which we're reading on Saturday. Plus, they both told me about this. Then it got to be too much and they couldn't sustain it. It got worse and worse. And when I met them, their relationship was at an all-time low. To do them justice and to balance out the picture, however, Ken said the three of them had many wonderful and funny times together. They laughed a lot, kidded each other, and shared a common sense of humor and total devotion to the course. As contradictory and nearly impossible as it sounds, they actually shared great love and trust in one another that carried them through some very difficult times. Others around Bill and Helen also commented on their real love for one another, though it was often eclipsed by their antagonism. When Ken returned to New York from Israel in April 1973, exactly how he was going to be included in this monumental project was a bit unclear. Since Ken was now frequently in their offices, Bill found him a part-time job to justify his spending so much time there, observing normal protocol as much as possible to avoid arousing suspicion about their hidden work. And here again, this belief that they have to hide what they're doing, doesn't help anybody really to be open about what's really going on with them. But the fear of being caught. I mean, it's so crazy. The fear of being caught writing a book about, how to change the world. Well, first off, if Jesus was giving them all of this, he was going to make pretty dang sure that nothing was going to happen to it that was going to jeopardize either Bill or Helen or Ken or any part of the scribing. So, the fear that, being caught doing this would cause a problem really was not justified. They were they were given everything they needed, and yet they were in fear. And that just leads me to looking at my own situation. Anytime that I'm in fear over, my circumstances, I have to remember I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here as a representative of the Christ. So, Jesus doesn't it isn't going to allow something to interfere with my uh, mission if I won't let anything interfere with my mission. So, they could have done this and not been afraid at all, but they hadn't developed that state of trust where they knew that he was going to take care of them. And, I mean, Jesus is just as interested in getting this course out as they were, and more so.
Yeah,
So,
you're invited to share, Florian. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Did you put your hand up and I didn't even, okay, go ahead. I don't have my,
No, no, no. I just wasn't sure if it was like Saturday, so I didn't want to interfere or what have you. No, I
no,
love what you're saying, Lynn. I love what you're saying. And, today's lesson, fear is not justified in any form. And he tells us it's deception. And it attests to that you've seen yourself as you could never be, and therefore look upon a world which is impossible. Not one thing in this world is true. It does not matter what the form in which it may appear. It witnesses but to your own illusions of yourself. Let us not be deceived today. We are the sons of God. There is no fear in us, for we are each a part of love itself. And he's telling us our fears are foolish. Would you allow your son to suffer? Give us faith today. Faith is the recognition of what we are, belief in that. Give us faith today to recognize your son and set him free. Let us forgive him in your name, that we may understand his holiness and feel the love for him, which is your own as well. And I was going to share before we began, it was very interesting contemplation this week. It really came to me, crystallized that what we are aligning ourselves with, we're creating more of. So when we're talking about fear here, if we could just catch ourselves and recognize that if I'm in the ego perception of the world and I'm going to manifest more fear for myself, but I have the choice to choose again. So I wanted to share that because it was very clear to me in meditation this week that we are to really rise above that battleground. And if we're in the holy instant, accepting ourselves as we truly are, then that's what we're going to create more of in our experience. And regardless of any form of duality, good, bad, right, wrong, whatever it is that we think, we're still aligning ourselves with the fearful mind that's going to manifest more of that for us in our experience. Thanks.
thank you for that, Gloria. And yeah, sorry I didn't see your hand before that. Yeah, I went and got the lesson so we could take a look at it because you're absolutely right. This really does lead to thinking of, what am I afraid of? And why, how can I be fearful if I knew who walked beside me. Um, and it's so clear that, Jesus is, asking us to give up the idea that we can be harmed, or that something then can happen to us, because not one thing in this world is true. I love that. Not one thing in this world is true. And I love this prayer. How foolish are our fears? Would you allow your son to suffer? Give us faith today to recognize your son and set him free. Let us forgive him in your name, that we may understand his holiness and feel the love for him, which is your own as well. I love that. I love that. Thank you once again, Glorian, for reminding us of that.
She has her hand up again.
Yes, I see that. Go ahead, Glorian.
Yeah, no, this is just, I just think so beautiful. And again, with the word faith, what faith really is faith in what we are as we were created. And Jesus tells us in the course, faith versus faithlessness. And in the faithlessness, we're identifying with the ego. So to have faith is really the trust of knowing what I am and the willingness to live from that place. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Glorian. Did you want to say something, Sharon?
No, I was funny because I was doing a lesson this morning. It's not in sync with the lesson today. I did that one, but then it was Our Holiness Blesses the World, because I'm using that when I have something that's seemingly outside of me and I don't, whether it has to do with a past experience or a political viewpoint, I am just doing the forgiveness and blessing. Because when you bless, you're automatically right back in the right mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, Sharon, because that is my work too. I walk through the world as a resurrected being, that I have allowed the Holy Spirit to be the life in me, and my holiness, that holiness is what I am, and it does bless the world. So, what a difference it makes to walk into a grocery store, knowing that you are there to bless the world, that every person that you come upon, you're going to be blessing. That everything that you see, you're going to be blessing, because you're blessing the world, not just the people, but the world itself. So going through your life, just on your day to day, just blessing everything, which is, boy, I went and learned, got initiated to do the oneness blessing. I am blessed, and that's my birthday lesson. I'm blessed as a son of God. I am blessed and I can bless. That's really what I feel like I'm here for. And Gloria, did you want to say something else?
Yes, and I love that. That is what we're here to do, to truly bless the world, and giving and receiving a one in truth. So we have to first be open and willing to receiving that blessing. And blessing is really making no demands, which is not having any judgments on anything, which is the open-mindedness that Jesus talks about in the characteristics of God's teachers. And that's true forgiveness. So we've accepted that blessing for ourselves, that recognition of what I am, and recognize not making demands and judgments on our own self, and being gentle. All of that ties in together. Gentle with ourselves so that we can receive that love and be in that state of the holy instant where we're not thinking, we're not judging, we're not projecting our own fear onto what's out there, but we've willing to accept what we are and continue to move into that space of non-judgment, which is true forgiveness. And that's the blessing of the world. I bless the world because I bless myself. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's beautiful, Gloria, and that's it. Why we're doing what we're doing. So I love that. So Sharon, do you want to read, or you want me to continue reading?
I can't, where did you stop? I'm
When,
losing.
when Ken returned to New
When
York?
Ken returned to can you imagine being them? That must have been so exciting.
I know it.
When I read the book, like years ago, Journey Without Distance or this one, I have to say, when I do that, I feel like I am with them. Because it's an alive feeling, just beautiful. Since Ken was now frequently in their offices, Bill found him a part-time job to justify his spending so much time there, observing normal protocol as much as possible to avoid arousing suspicion about their hidden work. As Ken looked over the previously edited material now referred to as Hugh Lynn Casey's version. And that's like the original one, right?
Yeah.
I wonder like why they changed it so many times. I guess preferences, I guess.
Yeah, I think there were some mistakes in it, and they just wanted to make it more readable.
So the
So
IM pentameter wasn't really done. It wasn't done by Jesus. That was done
yeah,
by
it was. I mean, now all of that they didn't really change much after the first 4 or 5 um, chapters. The first few chapters were just kind of really rough. And so they went through and edited and smoothed out and whatever, put things where they wanted them to be. So like that first edition, there had let me see here because it's the same one that is now being given or is called the Sparkly edition, and it had like 53 or 54 miracle principles, and like Bill said, oh, I think 50 is a better number, so they merged some of the miracle principles and kind of rearranged them and made it so that there were 50. But if you look at the miracle principles in the original edition or the sparkly, they're very long. They have a lot of explanation and description in them. And yeah, there's 53 of them. And so they just went through and made it more readable and gave it, what, appeared to be more um, that they could be more helpful to people. So those first few chapters, they did change, but for the most part, after about chapter 5, it was just consistently very little editing needed to be done. Glorian, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have that typewritten set of notes somewhere in my storage. Someone had given it to Sandy, so she did have that. When you were speaking about that iambic pentameter, in Perry's book, he does describe in detail about that. But I think it picked up somewhere along the line, but it had to come from Jesus because of the way it, like, take the lesson. I loosed the world from all I thought it was. Da 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 da. That's the iambic pentameter. I mean, no human being could really possibly have continued that throughout the rest of the text. So I just thought I'd share that.
I didn't know. No, where does it say that? Is it Robert Perry's
Well, it's a purple book.
I
The
have it. No, I do. I just haven't.
in the back. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on a second.
Well, I do have his book. Do you use his? I always use the Foundations for
I
Inner.
use I basically use the blue book because that's what we always used. But
Yeah,
I did purchase this one, and somebody asked me something about it the other day, so I happen to have it here. Let me find it. I'll let you know.
I have all the versions because I had groups here. I had a group come in 2 years ago that no, it was more than that, about 5 years ago, that used to come and study the course with me, but they didn't like it. There were a couple Christians in the group that could not fathom how we could be the Son of God. They didn't even want to hear that. So
It's in
they
the
weren't.
cameos in the back. Let me see if I can find it.
But I think Robert Perry has some fabulous what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
Scholarly.
yeah,
Yes.
he's very similar to Ken in a very different way, but they're similar. They're both highly intellectual. Yes, they're both scholars, is what I see. But Ken was like, I didn't know Robert, but I bought his book too because I wanted to see what it, and it's gigantic, isn't it?
It's huge. I
Yeah.
don't think he has them outlined, but it's one of the cameos if you go through it in the back. He has something on iambic pentameter.
Now, I don't know that it's really necessary. I do understand why Ken didn't bring it forward, like the whole thing, or Helen, because all the stuff that he puts in is interesting, but it's not necessary.
Right,
You know,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
to
and
me, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. The blue book, to me, we've always used that. I still use that. I use the foundation site. It has
I like
everything
the
that we need.
foundation. Yeah.
yeah, well, and the fact is that they were asking Jesus, and Jesus was telling them, take this out, put this in. And you know that and Helen didn't regard it, or none of them regarded it as sacred word, as some people say, oh, it's a sacred word, you can't change it. None of them regarded it that way. You know, they saw that, you know, it was actually trying to get, you know, teach something that, you know, we needed to learn, and, you know, put it in a way that is going to be helpful for people. Of course, they never once imagined that there would be millions of copies of the course out there. They never once imagined that there would be, you know, hundreds of thousands of people studying the course. They thought it was going to be something that a few people had. I think Helen said 6 or 8, and that would be it. So they weren't editing it for, you know, some future great audience. They were editing it for clarity. And Glorian, please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it is for clarity. Because if you go in some of the chapter 2 here and what have you, it gets quite psychologically detailed. And although that's great, and like for me, I like to read some of this and stuff, I don't know that it's necessary for everyone. And everything's perfect. So if they were guided to do that, there was a reason.
Yeah.
And perhaps, heavy stuff like this would have turned some people. We don't really know what anything is for. All we know is that it worked for me. All I know is it worked for me. And I use that book almost exclusively. So anyway.
The
Yeah.
ionic pentameter in the beginning of me doing the course was hard for me because I was reading it with the ego, and the ego was trying to figure it out. And you can't read A Course in Miracles by believing you're still a body. You can read it, but you will struggle. It's really talking about formlessness always. Don't you think that's true, guys?
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, it's really not here to teach us how to understand Shakespearean language, or it's really here to help us to shift our minds. And there is a certain thing, you know, that things in rhythm, you know, you do tapping, you do different things in different rhythms.
Right.
It does help to set things. That's why nursery rhymes, and you have little you know, I after I before E except after C. You know, you have all these little mnemonics so that you can remember things, and because it's a part of a rhythm that people are that is kind of natural for us to hear and relate. So I think, you know, there was a purpose to it. It just, you know, may not be what we understand in our you know, ego minds, but there was a purpose to it. So do you want me to continue, Gloria? Go ahead, please.
It's Cameo 29 in case anyone's interested.
Oh, let me hear.
Oh no, it's long. But in case anybody wants to look into reading it
Oh, it's
about
29 because I have the
it's
book,
Cameo
so I'll look it
29.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. So
Helen and Bill had already, oh, do you want to read it,
no,
Lynn?
go ahead and read. Yeah.
I'll just read to the end of this and
Okay.
then, okay. Helen and Bill had already gone through the text more than once, and though they had removed much personal as well as references to Freud, Jung, and Casey, and several friends and colleagues, the capitalization was inconsistent. Some section headings were not clear, and some personal information remained. Bill was burned out by the initial editing process, but he recognized the need for more and had been urging Helen, although with ambivalence, for several months to join him in renewing the process. She refused. Oh my God, the notes that Carol had to take for this. Now, however, with growing admiration for Bill's tireless, enthusiastic, and ready to serve her completely, she was persuaded to start another round of editing. When ACM's dictation first began, Bill and Helen had no idea what was unfolding. They presumed it was a long and comprehensive answer to their request for a better way to live. Therefore, Helen wrote everything as it appeared in her mind without discrimination. Why not? After all, it was for them. Bill often had a list of questions for Helen to ask the voice, and answering them seemed helpful in facilitating her ability to receive. Okay, your turn, Lynn.
Okay. As the material continued to appear, it became clear that some of it was not intended to be part of the course itself, but was personal advice, answers to specific questions, something of a three-way conversation. Now it is obvious that the non-personal course is for anyone who chooses to practice it, but that did not dawn on them until the voice settled into a monologue format rather than the dialogue that seemed predominant in the early text. And I just want to stop right here and mention that if you're following along with Bruce and I reading Absence from Felicity on Saturday, there are many, many things that were never written down in notes that Helen just spoke straight out and Bill typed up as she spoke it. And some of these things are amazing, and a lot of them actually made it into the course or parts of the course, but that actually there was, I mean, it was Jesus saying, through Helen standing there saying, Bill, you need to do this. You should be doing this way. And then saying to herself, Helen, I really want you to fix this or look at this. So Jesus talking directly to her and Bill, having a conversation between the three of them through Helen, if that makes any sense. So she's basically channeling Jesus and having a conversation with Bill, Jesus, and Helen together. Uh, so that's why, when you look at like the things that were taken from the texts, the things that were in the what we call the original edition or the Hugh and Lynn Casey edition or whatever, a lot of that stuff didn't come from notes. And so they I just trust the one that Jesus approved. So that's all I have to say. The blue book. Go ahead, Gloria.
Yeah, like I said, I also agree with that, Lynn, that there's everything there that we need, and some of the other stuff might be interesting, but also you take a look at our own journals and notes and that recognition that some things are personal for us. And just like when we share in the community, our personal stories are helpful and it gives testimony to the principles beyond that, beyond those, the symbols, beyond the experience, beyond the symbols, which are the words and thoughts. And if we look at that impersonal nature of God or the impersonal nature of the principles, that's what heals. That's what heals, not the story, because the story is always an aspect of the mental. And what the truth of what's coming through the love, the true love, that's what's going to heal us because that's from the impersonal nature of God or the one singular reality, the one mind. So there is, that's why I feel that, if they were told what to take out, what not to take out, that's perfect. And if you want to look at this other stuff and it helps you, great, because all beliefs that lead to progress should be honored. And we'll never take anything away. How scholarly, and I mean, the book is amazing, how we did that. But for me, I never had any problem with the blue book. So, I think that once we recognize that beyond any of this, even the book itself becomes a symbol, and beyond that is that experience of oneness that we attain through the holy instant, just accepting the holy instant for ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Gloria. And yeah, I think that you put that very well. And I'm agreeing with you. There's so many times that during my past Probably because I came from, being a very strictly believing in the Catholic Church and the Pope. Even after I was no longer believing in that, I still had this idea that God has a certain way he wants things to be. And if you deviate from his plan, then you're a heretic. And I'm seriously, uh, um, have those kind of thoughts in my mind. So when, I see people, taking it and saying, oh, well, this should be put back in and this should have, they're second guessing Jesus, second guessing Helen and Bill in their editing, second guessing, the guidance that someone else got, then I think, well, you're being uh you're being a heretic. You're going against what God wanted. And that's, of course, just ridiculous. It's a silly idea, but one that for some reason has stuck with me. So, anyway, so it's obvious that the non-personal course is for anyone who chooses to practice it, but that did not dawn on them until the voice settled into a monologue format rather than the dialogue that seemed predominant in the early text. So that little conversation stopped, and once they got going with it, they were able to actually just hear the the text without all of the personal advice that the first part of it was full of. So continuing to read, as various versions of the course have become available since the original publication in 1976, controversy has surfaced over who did what kind of editing. Judith Scott Sketchwickson remarked that although she was not yet involved during the time of the editing, she was included in the subsequent decisions that characterized Helen and Bill's interactions. And this is from Judy. Helen was totally in charge. Bill made suggestions gently. Ken sat by quietly and unobtrusively, and Helen would, quote unquote, rule the roost. For those who promote the idea that Ken made all the final decisions and had final editorial approval, quite the opposite was the case. I remember during the proofreading of the Blues, the final copy before printing, when challenges to inappropriate capitalizations were made. Ken would just shrug, and Helen would always get her way. The same was true, even when it came to the color of the book's cover. Bill and I wanted blue. Ken also felt that it would be an appropriate color, but Helen was adamant about black and would not change her mind. Finally, Ken quietly queried if we should ask the book's author for a decision. Helen made a sour face. I'm like, oh, you're trying to ruin my fun by asking Jesus. Helen made a sour face, but agreed that we should be silent, ask the question, and listen for the answer. When we opened our eyes, she muttered, okay, he says blue, but a very dark blue. And so for the cloth covered first edition, it was a very dark blue indeed. Oh, that's hilarious. My goodness. Yeah, Glorian, please go ahead.
I have a question. Does anyone know? Didn't she dream of the book? She dreamt of the book. Wasn't it blue in the dream?
I think in the dream, the book was black and
Uh,
had the pearls, because I think that's why the original edition is black with the pearls on it. So
okay.
yeah, she dreamed about a book. So I would expect that this who knows? I mean, really, but the fact is that she asked Jesus and he told her black or blue. Oh, that's the willingness to be wrong. Honestly, isn't that just gorgeous? Um, yeah, I think so.
Hi, Myrna. Welcome.
Yeah.
Mute, mute. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
All right.
Lynn, are you gonna finish this or because it's time now to stop anyway?
Right. Yeah, it is. And actually, I need to take a quick break anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and I know I can't mark this page. Try as hard as I want. Mark, nope. Mark, nope.
Can
Don't
you
ask
put
me.
up the chapter 15, or you think that?
Yes, yeah, I absolutely will do that.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and stop.